Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock. We'll convene the State Building Code Council Legislative Committee for today, the 21st of January, 2026. Start with a roll call, please.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Todd Byerther,
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Tom Young,
Here.
Roger Haringa,
Here.
Joe Anderson, Ben O'Mara, Angela Haupt, Representative Alex Remmel.
Looks like Angela's connecting now.
Okay.
All right. Well, hopefully we don't have the distractions that we did at the end of the last meeting today. I think technology will hopefully take care of that.
We should be good for that one.
What's that?
We should be safe today.
Yeah. All right. Next thing on the agenda is to review and approve the agenda.
Move approval of the agenda as shown.
Todd, a second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as shown. Any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Next thing is to review and approve the minutes from January 15th.
So move to approve the minutes as presented.
The minutes were not approved by staff in time, so they'll actually be for tomorrow's meeting. They're posted. I got them posted just a little bit ago. So you can review those for tomorrow's meeting and we can review them and approve them. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, motion to table that item then.
Yes, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to table that item. We'll do that till tomorrow. I guess I didn't ask anybody in the public if they wish to introduce themselves. We need to be cautious here, of course, but we can do that if they want to raise their hand.
And Tom, are you familiar with using the attendees and panelists function in the participants list?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
So I see some names here. Patrick, please.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
Tim.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
All right, that's all I see. So we'll move forward back to the item number 4, legislative update. Dustin, where were we?
It's hard to know exactly where we were. I know they interrupted Roger speaking on a topic, and I believe we were kind of touching base on these two bills, the HB 2346 and HB 2381. And we'd kind of gone over the different bills we had in our high priority list, and we didn't make it to any of our other bills in there. And I guess I would pause. And Roger, did you want to maybe continue your thoughts from the last meeting, or you want to kind of just start fresh and we'll run through the whole list?
You're stretching my memory for somebody who's 64 years old from all of a week ago. I believe, Dustin, the point I was going to bring up and try to make was my experience with the council is we rarely take positions on bills. It's a rarity. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and I know that I have missed a time or two, so maybe that's something this group felt like we should do or could do. Weighing in on how it would making sure that the legislature understands how it would impact us is important. But beyond that, we all have our own personal opinions, probably, both from individuals as well as for those people that we represent. Um, but I'm not sure that the council is the best place for us to offer our opinions and express our opinions to the legislature. Now, I say that knowing that, like I said, I have missed a meeting or two if those particular bills people felt that it was important that the council weigh in as a yay or nay, take an opinion on that. That's fine. I just was, so I'm just going to say, not remembering any of the specifics of where we were at last week before we started, I believe that that was the point I was trying to make. So.
Okay. I appreciate it, Roger. Before we get going too far down this list, this is the same list that was posted for our meeting last week. There have been additional bills that come across my desk that are going to be added to tomorrow's list and agenda for discussion. But it's my hope today to get through what we didn't get through last week, so that we can get back on, an even footing for moving forward. So as we move through, we have the two bills, 2346 and 2381, that are essentially like for like. One replaces the term middle housing with low-rise residential buildings and vice versa. Otherwise, they're both looking for some performance-based codes for those uh, topics there. And Todd, I see your hand.
Well, I was just going to remind everyone that Representative Dewar announced in local government that 2346 was replaced. So even though it still shows up, it's whatever the term is, stagnant.
Yes.
2381 is the one to focus on.
All right. Then getting through the other high priority bills, we had SB 5429, which would bring in, I believe, 6 additional council members to the council makeup. And we didn't take a stance on this one last session. Concerns on this, I don't really have any other than, we just have more people to bring into the council and make sure we're getting everything out to them. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think part of the objection I had personally to this bill last year was the fact that it changed the makeup of the elected officials' appointments to the council, and did it population based rather than geographically based. And I think that there's some risks there, that some opinions, from, if just say, everybody was from the west side of the state, the east side of the state wouldn't have any representation at all from the elected officials. And I think it's important that, I'm speaking for myself mostly, but I see Jay nodding. I think that we come from a little bit different perspective than a lot of the tradespeople do, because we kind of look at how these things represent our constituents as a whole. And so I think it's important that at least that part of it be left as it is.
Gotcha. All right, I'm not seeing any other hands popping up. We then have substitute Senate Bill 5552 for Kit Homes. This is seeking to get some rulemaking done to allow for kit homes to be used within the building code. I'll pause for Roger. And you're muted, Roger. You're drawing on the screen, Roger.
Sorry
There you go.
about that. I'm having technical difficulties. Yeah, I wanted to go back to the last bill on Tom's comment. It is my personal opinion that I agree with him. I think representation from east-west is more important than population in general. But going back to my first comment of, we as the council kind of understand the are we getting proper representation? We understand, I think, where the positions are contributing. So I'm wondering if that would be, I don't know that I think a neutral stand is correct. But is there some education that would help the legislators understand the way things are currently done and the impacts? So, a question. I don't know.
Todd?
Well, on that one, I mean, it's still sitting. It's not scheduled for any hearing, so I guess we also could balance our effort on whether or not it's actually scheduled for action this year. It's a good question though, Roger. And then if I may, the same with this one. 55, 52. No, I'm sorry. We're not on kid homes yet. We're on the other one. It's not scheduled in. It's back in Senator Short's committee, but it's not
Yeah, it's not scheduled yet. And, there's getting to tomorrow. One of the big things that we don't have available today that we will have tomorrow is next week's hearings and committee schedules.
Okay. And then finally on the 55, 52, if I just can jump to that. I have a question because that one's interesting. That made it all the way through the Senate, through the House. No, was sitting in the rules. I'm sorry, it was sitting in rules in the House. And then at the end of the session, it gets kicked back to the Senate, to the original House, it seems. So now it's in Senate rules. So I just don't, it's an honest question. I just don't know how that works. But it's not
Um,
scheduled to come
Yeah, so far
back to
it's
the
not
House, to my understanding.
scheduled, and as far as like how it works, it is goes back to the House and Committee of Origin, and there could be potential amendments made to that bill, and it goes through the whole process again. But if anything that doesn't make it across the finish line in this session, will not come back with the same bill numbers if the topic arises in the next session.
Like, if I may.
Mhm.
My question was, I don't think it needs to go back to committee, does it? It's sitting in House rules, or was, and then it got referred back to Senate rules as House origin. I just don't know how that works, if it can come back to House rules and go to the floor.
I would have to research that and follow up with you on that one. Jay?
Two comments. One is I concur with Todd that part of our focus should be on bills that have upcoming hearings versus a number of things that may have stalled since last session. And my understanding from doing legislative committee work in other contexts is that things go back one step from where they were before. So if it was scheduled for action on the floor, it goes back to rules. In this particular case, although there are some nuances on how both chambers deal with stuff, but it's um, if it's already something that was scheduled for the floor, it's not going to necessarily go back to committee for us to have a public hearing.
Gotcha. And then we have SB 5747 looking for some exemptions for affordable housing. This one will honestly, I haven't reread it here today, but this was high priority for us now, but it's not popping up on any of the schedules for this session so far. And so that's kind of our high priority bills for today. Getting into medium priority bills, we have 3D printed buildings. That one is looking to get the 3D printing appendix adopted for the state to bring some more options for construction. We have HB 1582 child care centers. This one is, I believe it's companion passed, and so we don't really have a lot of mileage to make on this one. But this is the one we've been talking about, where the actual practice might need some rulemaking. So in 2025, we just had taken the stance that it wouldn't require rulemaking to bring any of this bill to fruition. But some concerns have been raised, and we've been working on some stuff in relation to the language of that bill. But this one will not go anywhere because it passed last session. We have a new one, HB 2228, with a companion SB 6001 for scissor stairs. This is seeking to bring in a concept to another space-saving concept for residential construction. And scissor stairs, they're essentially like a double helix stairwell in one one shaft, but they're separated stairwells. So two specific egress paths, but occupying kind of the same space and accessing from different locations within the building. We have the agritourism bill from last session, 5055. This one was seeking for if someone had like a barn on their property and they wanted to use it to bring the public in for agritourism opportunities. The issue that was raised on this one was that it was not requiring full compliance with the building code. As a result of bringing in the public. And so there is another one on here a little bit further down. It's been amended, it's also labeled agritourism. That one doesn't have as much concern because it is says that full compliance with the building code is required. SB 5784 agency demographic data. I think this one is on this list. It made it on here from the DES list, and this one's not relevant to the SBCC. So apologies for having that one on here still. Todd, go ahead.
I was just going to comment on the scissors there. So I think it went through hearing in the House side a couple days ago and is for executive session on Friday. And then I think it went through Senate today on hearing. The way it reads is very simple. If it was passed, I think it'd be pretty straightforward, in my opinion, that the IBC tag and maybe some interaction with the fire tag could address that without special tag action.
Agree.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. No other hands. That gets us to our low priority bills. We have energy labeling of residential buildings. This one doesn't, well, this one's from last session, doesn't really require a lot of the SBCC. Then we get to minimum parking requirements. We talk about parking a lot in relation to EVs, but this one doesn't bring a lot to bear for the SBCC work moving forward. We have detached ADU limits, which would bring more density for detached ADUs for folks looking to do that in, I believe, the UGAs, and doesn't it's more of a planning bill than a building code bill. We have the International Fire Code Administration Bill 1654. This one would allow local jurisdictions to do more within their purview as enforcing the International Fire Code. Doesn't impact SBCC as far as rulemaking or anything like that. Then SHB 1684, water recreation facilities. This one is tangential to the SBCC, but for the most part does not affect us when we're talking about how the building code intersects with the water recreation facilities. The water recreations are going to be like commercial pools. And then we do in the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code have some provisions there. But water recreation facilities are governed by the Department of Health, and they're currently wrapping up some rulemaking on updating their pool codes to be the Model Aquatic Health Code. And this kind of brings some of that to them. And I believe the big change that might impact SBCC is therapeutic water facilities. So like if you had a cold plunge in a doctor's office, for example, those are currently regulated underneath the building code. And I think this one brings those ones out of our code and puts them in the realm of the Department of Health. 5190 allows school districts to request some extensions to state energy performance standards. And this one doesn't impact our rulemaking or processes, just gives some school districts more time to comply with the requirements of that section that it's amending. We have 5597, which goes along with 1684. So those are just companions. Then we get to the new ones for this session. 5941 would allow for certain low population schools to be exempt from the renewable energy requirements of the energy code. So anything right now over 10,000 square feet is required to bring on-site renewables in the amount of about, I think it's 0.5 watts per, I don't want to say per square foot, but I've got some numbers there and I'm going to start mixing it up if I try to say from memory. But
Yeah,
with this
it is
bill,
per square foot.
okay, thank you, Krista. This one will allow those low population jurisdictions to be exempt from this one. And it's in climate zone 2. And the exemption would not be extended to low population schools in climate zone 1. This one would require some rulemaking, but nothing super substantial for the energy codes. When we get to Senate Bill 6064, it's got a companion HB 1654. Similar, it's allowing local jurisdictions to really embrace enforcement of the fire code and doesn't require the SBCC to do any rulemaking as a result. Then we get to the bills that we're monitoring. All of these don't affect the SBCC in a way that is going to require us to do any rulemaking or consider rulemaking. The one I mentioned earlier, the agritourism HB 2129, this one is on monitoring because if there's, I guess the reason they're on monitoring is there is possibility, in my viewpoint, that if there's modifications made, that it could bring the SBCC into play in bringing the bill's requirements forth to the state. So all of these don't require anything of the SBCC right now. But they could if they're rewritten in a way that does. So we're keeping an eye on them. Any updates to those ones we'll re-review, and if they become impactful, they'll run from the monitoring up to the other sections of this spreadsheet. But we have the new agritourism bill. We have 2151 for factory-built structures. This one on the surface feels like it's impactful to SBCC, but this one is for the Department of Labor and Industries. They will be looking to update some of their factory-built structures standards, and this one brings the international codes into their consideration for those standards that they might adopt for factory-built structures. We have HB 2212 dealing with microplastics polluting our environment and the Puget Sound. The washing machines, both commercial and residential, have been identified by a study to be a major source of microplastics in our environment. And the bill would require filtering of the microplastics on residential and commercial washing machines. The reason this on the monitoring is as due to or after staff research this one, most of those filters are built into the machines. And right now it's not written in a way that would require us to do rulemaking on the plumbing code to require a filter on those. And just as a side note, the microplastic filters, they're available, but they are a spendy device to incorporate into a plumbing system. And so I'm hopeful that those will stay on the appliances and not in the building code required stuff. The 2296 distributed energy resources. This one doesn't impact the SBCC, but we want to keep an eye on that one moving forward. The specific summary is escaping my brain at the moment. Krista, do you have a quick summary on the top and the tip of your tongue by chance on this one?
No, I can't really recall it off the top of my head right now.
Okay, apologies for calling you out on the spot. But this one, the analysis is that one's not going to impact the SBCC, but we'll keep an eye on it in case it does. Permit review processes bill HB 2418. This one is seeking to streamline the permit review process at the local level. This one would require that once something is vested by being a complete application, that there's maximum timelines for issuance of the permit. And if it's not issued within the timeline, it's considered issued and work can commence. The rest of these were just monitoring bills from last session and not too worried about them coming back at this point, but we will continue to monitor any revisions there. This new one, SB 6015, we had the companion for it earlier. Same for 6050 has the companion 2296. And then SB 6054, anything concerning wildfire seems like a hot topic for us. No pun intended, actually. But this one would prevent local homeowners associations from preventing the installation of fire hardened materials on structures. So if their architectural review said you can't install X, Y, or Z product, they can't do that. They are allowed to have some limitations there, but for the most part, this not will require allowance of the fire hardening materials on houses within those homeowners associations, condo owners associations, and there's a third association that I think covers the rest of the common owned buildings and things like that. The other one here that I hadn't had a chance to review is HB 2330, State Campus District Energy. This one I'm not anticipating being something that's going to impact the SBCC, but I haven't had a chance to fully review this one just yet. And so we've got some new stuff on our lists here today. I've got a pile of bills that will be on the list for tomorrow. And so I guess I'll pause for comments, questions there. And if we want to open any of these to review them, I'm more than happy to open them up and get some more information there. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any hands popping up. So the next thing I wanted to go over as part of our legislative update was the hearing schedule. It's a little bit late to do much for this schedule, but since we didn't get a chance to look at it at last week's meeting, I'll just kind of run through this one. Todd mentioned that most of these are in executive session this week and have most of them have already passed. So on the 16th, we had a hearing on 5941. We didn't get a chance to talk about this one. I don't think there was any interest in having any testimony from SBCC on this one. In the Senate, we had SB 5885 in executive session on the 16th. In the local government committee, we had the 2228, 2273, 2381, and 2418 before that committee. And we didn't have a chance to send anybody there. We did testify on 2273 last session, but I think that the sponsor on that one heard us that time, and we're not really too concerned about the path that one's taken at the moment, since that's for embodied carbon. We've got an embodied carbon proposal not making its way, but it's been approved to the CR 102 for the building code. So some of the ground asked for to be covered by that bill has already been covered. So the impact of that bill is less after this session if it passes. Angela, go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I just had a quick question on that one because I was listening to the hearing on the embodied carbon, and Rep. Dewar specified that the request for that bill came from the State Building Code Council. And I was trying to figure out when or who that came from, as far as I just didn't remember us discussing that to ask for that piece of legislation. So I just was trying to get some clarification on it, because it's got some stuff in it that's a little off.
So as far as content of the bills, anything that is like, if I recall correctly from the last session, if we testified and requested any change as a result from the council, it would have been on how it impacts our process, not necessarily the content of what it's asking the council to do. So there might have been a change request on any sort of dates that might have been in there. And as far as any other changes, I know that some folks are engaging and not representing the council in those engagements, and there could be a misconception that that was representative of the council and not an individual.
Okay, I was just making sure I hadn't missed something because I didn't remember a full discussion on anything like that. So, okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Jay?
The other part of reference might have been the embodied carbon study that was released at the end of the year that was presented some options without any recommendations from the council, and the representative may have been keying off of that as well.
Thank you, Jay. All right. In the local government on the 19th, public hearing on 6064. That one's one that is not impactful to the SBCC. In the labor and workplace standards, public hearing on 2151. National standards for factory built housing. That's the one that's affecting L&I, but does mention the international building codes. We got 5928 in executive session on today at 8 a.m. And this one concerning the wildfire risk models. This one talks about how the insurance industry applies risk categories to individual policy owners and gives them a method to appeal those. So if the rating was given to a specific structure, property, etc., and things have changed since that rating was assigned. Homeowners and property owners are given a method to appeal that rating and bring the new relevant data to bear to hopefully reduce risk and risk ratings and hopefully reduce policy costs. But that one's not concerning the SBCC, even though it talks about wildfire risk models, but it's not doesn't have anything to do with the mapping or anything like that. In the House Senate, we had public hearings on 6001 for scissor stairs. We also talked about permit-ready residential plans there. I believe that one is one that we haven't touched on here yet, but this one's seeking to get some plans that are developed and ready to go. And, when you get these plans, the local jurisdictions would only vet how they are really placed on a site. They would come as considered approved for the contents of the structure once you get above the ground there. We had a public hearing on 6054. This is that one talking about fire hardening materials. Doesn't impact the SBCC. Had an exec session on SB 5885. This one's allows housing that is being developed by religious organizations to seek a higher density when they are going through the permitting process, and it reduces the requirements from being all of the development is designated as low-income family to 50% of the development being designated for low-income families, allows them to seek the density increase. In the capital budget in the House, HB 223 has a hearing tomorrow at 1:30. This one, like I said, is not impactful to the SBCC and is a relic on here from the DES list, and we'll get this one popped off. Then we had in the labor and workplace standards an executive session scheduled for Friday at 10:30. No need for anybody to worry about attending that. But this one impactful to L&I. And then local government house, we've got a bunch of executive sessions on Friday as well at 10:30. We've got the scissor stairs, embodied carbon, performance-based building codes, and permit review processes going before those committees. So a little late getting this information to everybody and for the group to make any requests to deliver testimony. But come tomorrow, we'll have an updated hearing schedule list to review. And then tomorrow's meeting is scheduled for 2 hours as well. But since we're making headway through the lists here today, I don't anticipate needing all of the 2 hours, but I wanted to just cover the base in case we didn't make it through everything here today. Um, and that's all I have for the legislative update. I see Jay, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I noticed that Bill 2141 that we spent a lot of time talking about that had the 10-year freeze of codes that we had talked about wanting to provide some information for hasn't been scheduled for a public hearing. It's on the council agenda for the full council on Friday. Do we think this bill is moving? Because just wondering on whether we were getting into a position to react very urgently, and I'm wondering if that's the same situation as things are moving forward.
I saw Angela, but Todd, your hand's up.
Oh, Angela can go ahead first.
Oh, well, no, she put her hand down. I just, in case she wanted to, I wanted to acknowledge.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jay. I was going to ask the same question because if it's not scheduled, then do we really need to, discuss it and take a position on Friday? I would lean maybe towards no. Like, I'm curious. I think the committee should determine if we need to put it on the schedule on Friday.
I would agree if it's not scheduled. And if it doesn't seem like there's gonna be any activity on it, then
If I may, the current status is it looks like it went from rules to local government, so it's in the House local government. So
okay. So it has budged, but
Maybe we could hold off on pulling it from the council agenda till tomorrow when we see what next week's schedule looks like.
that's a good way to monitor.
yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll raise a bill if we're ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we go to Senator Bateman's Senate bill on permit ready? Is that what it's called? Plan
Yes.
ready? So I've been watching that. It's interesting. I've in my manufacturing seat, I'm trying to understand it better. I think I've got a grasp of it now. So my understanding, and please correct me if anyone understands differently, it is focused under L&I's authority, which is modular. So that can be HUD homes or that can be six-sided boxes if they're under the building code. So I think it's limited to that. The fiscal note speaks to that also, that it's heavy on L&I and a little bit on the commerce because the commerce I think, is tasked with developing local ordinances for adoption. State Building Code Council is mentioned there, but I think it's appropriate. There's no fiscal note because I think it's just more coordination. I don't think we have a direct task for any rulemaking related to this if it were to go forward. So I think the fiscal note is correct that we don't have DES in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. It's on there, but there's zeros.
Right. It's on there because it's referenced, right?
Yes.
State Building Code Council reference to coordinate or some verbiage like that. Okay. Okay, so that's that. I guess I'll stop there before I jump to something else. I didn't watch the hearing today, so I don't know what was discussed. Okay, then jumping to a different one, which is the L&I factory ready? That's the other one I've been monitoring. I watched the hearing on that. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
The number, I'll find it real quick
Okay.
if you want to start talking.
I think it's at the top of the list. Where is it? Go down maybe a little bit.
I think this one's on our monitoring list.
Oh, there it is, 2151. I thought L&I did a really good place in house labor and workplace. They were very clear, which isn't evident in the bill, that they're asking for some inspection relief by third-party certifying agencies. So that's interesting, but it's probably not really relevant to SBCC. And then I think that's the primary focus of the bill. So I just wanted to monitor to make sure there wasn't an ask in here of anything special out of the building code. Oh, and then I think that where it does relate to what we are tasked with is, I think this is gives them authority to adopt the ICC MBI 1200, 1205, maybe 1210 standards. And I just bring that up because that, Angela, that's what's coming in that amendment for the IRC that we talked about. So just to make sure everyone understands this, that they would put that into their authority under their scope of modular, and then the amendment to the IRC, and then through code correlation, in my opinion, to the IBC is the same ability in the code to adopt those standards. So I think they're aligned. And that's it on that one.
Any other specific bills we'd like to raise?
Well, I'm happy to talk about 2381 if desired. The performance code.
Let's do that. That has some
Okay.
pretty big impacts.
Okay. And much of it is that just disclosure that I'm informing that just it happens to be my subject matter expertise and have had to ask from the manufacturing side to engage in this. So by no means representing the council directly. So that's why bringing it forward. Disclosing that, a lot of the questions that, if I may just describe the bill in my understanding, it's right now is written focused on 19.27. It's on the building code, asking for a technical advisory group to establish a performance-based code in the 2027 cycle. That's a really big task. So it is not in a hurry, but it is asking in the code cycle to explore this. And the other part where I'm disclosing my involvement is at the national level, I'm on the NIBS, the National Institute of Building Sciences technical committee that's establishing a standard for states and jurisdictions to adopt. And that just kicked off this month. So this is meant to be in sync and potentially position Washington as a partner in that pilot process. So again, there are no promises on when this would be done or if it reaches the finish line in that code cycle, but at the national level. But that's the intent. I can pause there with Angela if you have a question, and then I can go further on some of the questions I raised to the committee and council.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that this does affect the council. This is a huge lift that's going to be required to be done in addition to our other work for the 27 code cycle. And because there is no national vetted program currently for us to even piggyback on. I just want us as the council to be aware of the amount of work. This is another additional tag. This would not be able to be combined with the IBC or anything like that. This is a totally different tag, and it includes energy code and the other codes. So with the difficulty that we had getting just our base codes across the line this time, this is in essence another code that we would be creating almost from scratch. So I just want us to be aware. I don't think there's anything that we as a council are doing on or against this bill, but if we are asked to inform on it, it does need to be noted not only the amount of volunteer time, but staff time that's going to have to fit into our existing code development cycle on top of our current workflow. So I think a performance-based code would be amazing. I just want everybody to be aware of the workload that it will take in what is kind of a short amount of time, because it does actually have a deadline of it has to be in the 27 code cycle. So just want that put out there.
Thank you, Angela. Roger, if I may, just quick 30 seconds. Angela, yes, I hope I didn't imply I concur. I hope I didn't imply that it's not a heavy lift. I think it's a worthy lift. And then I'll circle back after Roger on talking about the energy code, because right now it's not written as affecting the energy code, but there are questions about its interaction with the energy code that I can go into, but I'll defer to Roger.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Angela. This code cycle, we've had 4 things that have been requested by the legislature to get looped in. And I know the 2 heavier lifting were the single exit multiplex housing. I think there's a small small unit size and
Dwelling units and temporary emergency shelters.
yeah, those 2 are still kind of in the works, but we were able to accommodate the single exit multiplex housing this year. They didn't hold up the schedule. Was it a lot of effort? Yes. I think that we had, at one point I tracked it and it was, I don't know, it was a lot of hours, both from staff time and from volunteer times. And my intent would be, once we wrap that up, to present that amount of effort to at least to the council. And, maybe that would be a number that could inform the legislature, that when you ask us to do this, this is the effort that you're asking us to do. So.
Angela?
The slight difference in those 2 is we sort of had a framework, and I understand that there are performance-based codes throughout the world, but those are, it's kind of a bit of an apples and oranges when you compare different countries to us sometimes. So this would be more of a from scratch coming up with the standards. And I know that it is at the international level, and that's just, yeah, and maybe we would be able to use a lot of that as our framework. It would be nice to be able to inform legislators of the amount of time it takes to do this stuff, because I know a lot of people on the tags, and this last code cycle especially was a burnout cycle. It was between the work that goes into the energy code and everything else. It takes a lot of work. And again, I do like this path. I would just prefer if it didn't have a hard deadline of the next code cycle, so that we could make sure we do a quality job and we don't get bit like we did with the WUI. So that's just, again, my opinion for the work that will need to be done by us.
Jay?
Does any of this issue surface through a fiscal note? Because when I look at the other work that we had to do custom, you had, because of the legislative mandate on efficiency, building a custom energy code, and that's just one piece of the code. For the other things that we are talking about with single stairs and others, we had Seattle Code or others as a starting point. And the way that I'm hearing this talked about is, no, this is doing all of our codes in a new way with no models and to piggyback on. So is there something that says through the fiscal note or elsewhere that we're going to need some significant new staff or new consulting budget to be able to go do this? Because it seems unrealistic to expect something that is orders of magnitude bigger than custom codes that we've done previously to be done solely by volunteers.
So we're trying to catch the need when we do our fiscal analysis for these. I do believe there's a fiscal note requested on this one. I'm not 100% sure if we've got it across the finish line yet, but we're trying to catch that in there. The one component that doesn't get included into the fiscal notes is the volunteer time. And so, we're trying to estimate the number of meetings and hours required to bring these across the finish line. And, it being that it is a new topic and we don't have a base to bring it on, we're kind of looking at, larger numbers than we would for something like the dwelling unit size and everything else. And so I would say that it's probably close, but it may not be completely indicative of all the concerns that we're raising within this body here, So we've got a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of staff hours and a lot of meeting hours going on, but we only thing we can really track into these fiscal notes is the staff time and meeting time. And then as part of that meeting time, there's, some of the budgetary considerations for what we budget for each meeting going in there, but that still doesn't recognize the volunteer time that's going into this effort.
Yeah, and that said, I mean, that kind of dovetails into what I was going to mention. We've already got the attention of several legislators on the fact that it is difficult for the council to get all of these big projects done in a timely manner, with the current staff levels and so on and so forth. And the amount of, they're recognizing now the amount of volunteer time that it really takes to push these things over the finish line too. So I think that along with, if we can complete this, which seems like a pretty worthy task, but help with the group that Todd's working on too. It might not be already done, but it'll be another effort that may be hopefully in parallel, but we will also, be able to make the point that the council does need more resources in order to, push these big trucks over the hill here. So, Todd?
Yeah, I can speak to all this. And I think every point is valid, and so I'm not disputing any of it. It is a heavy lift, but you'll see on page 2, right at the bottom there, that's why it very specifically references to consider emerging, I don't know what the verbiage is there, emerging national recognized standards and certification frameworks. This is happening with or without the state of Washington. The state of Virginia is very closely coordinating with NIBS on this effort, and that effort will start to become more and more, public. Unfortunately, those meetings right now are just not public meetings like some of these national standard meetings are. But the ask is, does Washington want to be partners with this, with that development of a national standard? Unlike the HUD code, it's not meant to be preemptive. And so it's very important that in however this bill is written, or if this were to go forward, that it is not developing or testing the authority of, say, the state building code council at the state level or the local jurisdictions for their enforcement. And so it still puts the authority to the local jurisdictions. And without getting too deep into that, the intent is to develop a consistent national code. For those of you in the weeds, you'll know that the ICCPC, a model performance code, is going through a revision right now. But that isn't, and it isn't excluded from this potential but as we know, the state legislature would have to directly say in statute that we are adopting and amending another code. This is not another code. This is an appendix in the IBC. It is assumed that even if you put this in, 95% plus percent of the solutions are going to come from the prescriptive codes already. So there's a lot more we can get into. I don't want to get into the deliberation on the subject, but it is very much intended to be part of the national standard effort, not start with a blank sheet of paper. Thank you.
Roger?
Yeah, I just found an email I sent in early December. I did some rough calculations of the number of hours for the single exit multiplex housing, just as a point of reference. And, I just the number of meetings that we had, and the number of people, I estimated just for the single exit about 50 hours for staff time. I would certainly like to have a conversation with Dustin about that. I know there was work behind the scenes, so maybe that's 75 or 100 hours. I don't know. And about 300 hours of volunteer time for the single exit. So double that for the two things that we did. Just as a general idea. And actually, I think that it would be a good point, and I know I've had conversations with Todd, is if the legislature is directing us to do code, the resource question needs to be addressed, both from a volunteer perspective and certainly from a staffing perspective. But even from a volunteer perspective, like, do you plug money in to hire somebody to drive this rather than just having Dustin do it? So I think the resource question, I think Tom, I don't know, Tom or Jay mentioned it, is a big one that I just think we need to we can inform the legislature. If they're going to ask us to do these things, this is the impact on our both the staff and the volunteers. So
Tom? Tom, you're muted.
So, I brought this up at previous meeting and kind of like use a term that the states use against the feds, like an unfunded mandate. And I think we need to kind of like remind the legislature that everything they ask has a cost to it. So, the council cannot just keep taking on essentially unfunded mandates. You know, and this sounds like it's huge.
So it's my understanding that in response to like our fiscal note considerations that we get out there for these, that, the bill doesn't say anything about how it's going to potentially fund this one, but in the budget that passes towards the end of these sessions, that appropriations can be made and should be made if there's, impact in that nature. But so it's hard to say when or if the money will come for some of these tasks, is I guess my point.
Todd, if you wouldn't mind allowing me to jump ahead, I want to, so I did state, those are kind of the numbers for the single exit multiplex housing. We did have something to start with for the single exit. The city of Seattle had a document. We did not have anything for the multiplex housing. We were starting from scratch with that. We listed a whole lot of, here are the issues we need to discuss. Went through those issues. One of the volunteers or a couple of the volunteers, in fact, Angela, you may have been part of that, created the initial document that then we, adjusted. And I think I believe that there are documents out there that we could use as a starting point. So I'm not sure that this is much more of an ask than what they did for probably if you combine the single exit multiplex housing, that's one thing. It may be a little bit bigger, but we're starting with something. We've got a process figured out for those special tags. In my mind, it would be something similar to what we did with single exit and multiplex. So, and I don't know, Todd, you probably understand the nuts and bolts of it, but if we have a document that we start with, we can get through in that, similar amount of time, I think.
Jay, would you like to go first, or I can respond after?
Go ahead and respond because I have
okay.
Comments.
I'll give my opinion. So first of all, I've already drafted a document in concert with these partners. It's just kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? But that's been shared even on the single exit tag committee. It's been posted, and I've shared it with multiple stakeholders, some that are on this call. So there's no secret. It's just it's not trying to give the code example before we've actually been given a mandate by the legislature. So sure, it's hard, but the question is if the state believes that this is important in terms of driving scale, driving down cost, and increasing certainty in permitting and speeding permitting, then the question really becomes, well, who? And right now, the State Building Code Council is the authority to do this. So it's just a question of whether or not, we do it. Sure, the ask of DES as our administrative arm is valid from appropriations, but everyone else is a volunteer, and they can choose, whether or not they want to contribute on the council. And then in this case, just like the special tag, that's another voluntary ask. It's not putting additional work on the IBC tag or the IRC or the energy code tag. it's a whole separate effort that people volunteer for. So I hear everyone, but we can also do hard things that are important to the state. So I'll give my opinion on that. And we're not alone in it. Multiple states are trying to do it. And if there's a better pathway in the state of Washington that I haven't been able to help inform better than that. So thank you.
Okay.
And I just wanted to note from a process standpoint, there's given that there is going to be some level of fiscal impact, bills often go from the policy committee, which this bill has already been through, to one of the fiscal committees, and that would be our opportunity to at least present some information about the fact that, and even the history of being able to say the single exit or the multiplex housing required X number of hundreds of hours of volunteers' time, and having amount on the energy code and things like that. I think that would be helpful to be prepared to surface in testimony before a fiscal committee when that happens.
Thank you. There any more on this bill? I think we kind of are tickling the next agenda topic with this one.
What's the next agenda topic?
To just give an update on yours and I's appearance at the House Local Government Committee. Not.
Oh, I didn't realize it was an agenda item. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
I think we're already kind of into it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we were there to inform on the bills, and Todd was there main stage talking, and we put it out there that the performance codes could be a way to realize cost savings in the construction world by achieving a goal, not necessarily having the prescriptive conservatism applied across the board, which brings extra costs. And I would say that probably sums up the testimony we gave. And then I was there to opine on any process questions for SBCC, but they didn't really arise. So Todd had the prime stage on that activity. So I appreciate Todd being there, and look forward to in the future testifying some more with all the you fine folks. And is there anything to add to that, Todd?
Well, I was going to ask the chair here if I shared that diagram. Happy to share that to the committee because some of the questions that came out of that can make, I had to do this diagram to try to wrap my head around what I thought I knew in order to communicate it.
Yeah. Would you mind kind of sharing it and running through that real quick?
Yeah, and this might get Angela to you made a question or a point earlier about does it, interact with the energy code, and those are a lot of the questions that are coming out of this. So please let me. Oh, Dustin, I'm.
You should be able to share at this point, and if you click the button, it might give me a request to allow it, but I'm inclined to press yes.
Action. Okay. Okay, let's do it this way.
There you go.
Does that look okay?
Tiny, but
it's a little small, but I think if you can zoom in as you talk about specific parts of that flow.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do my best here. Does that look okay?
It's better, yes.
Okay, so on the left, what this is the bottom red. It's saying that we have our IRC base code, we have our IBC base code. We've now gone through 2 efforts. Thank you, Roger, for leading these efforts. 1 through 6 units, 1 to 3 stories in the IRC, 1 to 24, 1 to 6 IBC. So both of those are really good prescriptive solutions that are being proposed by a work group. So it's essentially, in my opinion, a design by a committee, and it's going to be a good solution that is in the code. In my opinion, to get there, a lot of the discussion in that tag had to really fill the gap in between the IRC and the IBC. So we had to essentially establish a lot of the performance criteria, the risk factors. That's kind of language that's used in a performance code. So that's why on the bottom in red would be what this House bill is essentially proposing. 1 through 24 units, establishing different risk factors, performance criteria across those. However, the tag would determine it. I would propose that it be in small, medium, and large in those, because 1 and 2 unit makes sense. Up to 6 units starting to make sense in our state, up to 3 stories, and then the taller up to 6 stories. And right now, what I had to do with the question is, well, how is the energy code triggered? And I had to go through and do this diagram. So please let me know if my understanding is incorrect. Especially with the new amendment in the energy code that is proposed to accommodate up to 6 units with an interior corridor or interior space exit pathway. That's that amendment 24RE048, and then the MVPE just recently pushed forward to the council, kind of a slight revision to that from the tag. So that is over here where that allows that interior exit. So I'm getting into the details, but I just wanted to make level set that, is this everyone's current understanding? We know 3-story garden walk-ups, for example, are allowed 1 to 3 stories. That triggers the building code, but it's allowed to take the residential energy code if I'm correct. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. That's my understanding. So this bill doesn't change any of the pathways in the code. That was raised in the hearing about how is it going to allow different energy pathways and what the preferred, and it doesn't touch that. Those are existing, and in my understanding, if you were to do 1 through 6 units, you could still go to that amendment in the residential code, or you could do 1 through 24 units in the building code and take the prescriptive pathways, the performance pathways, so forth, in either of the codes within their limits. So does anyone dispute that before I get into the next ask? Or can anyone help me improve this diagram if I miss anything? And thank you for some of the partners and stakeholders on the call that have answered the phone when I've tried to ask questions on this. Okay. If not, the next question is, if you look in the 19.27 part of the bill as is, the whole goal is optimization. How do you come up with, instead of the design by committee solution, as good as that is, now how do you take those same performance criteria and do your own custom solution for specifically what a developer, a designer, an engineer would pursue, knowing that they had the opportunity in this bill to put it into essentially a code report and try to get it closer with the jurisdiction to accept this. It doesn't displace, doesn't preempt the jurisdiction. It just gets it prepackaged so that you can go jurisdiction by jurisdiction and work with that jurisdiction for acceptance and try to scale and do multiple. So you could do that in the prescriptive code under this bill. You don't even have to use a performance pathway. You could just do 100% prescriptive solutions to meet that criteria and say, this is my 3-story garden walk-up I want to do 100 times in Spokane, whatever. Now the question comes, part of performance-based design and in this bill is the optimization of both the embodied and operational carbon, so a whole building LCA, with the goal of driving down costs. This is not, in my read or understanding of the intent, it is to find optimization. It is not regulation. I know a lot of people are going to debate that and be triggered by the term embodied carbon, but carbon is cost, so forth, and that's the intent here. If so, now we reopen questions of, well, is that really allowed? If you're monitoring embodied carbon in your building for whatever reason, cost, can you really offset or substitute in something in the energy code? So I've always approached it. I mean, we know EPCA and appliances and all that other, and we had a great, council debate and public hearings and so forth on site versus source. I don't think this is directly asking that question of site versus source fuel types, but I don't know that I can give the best answer when we say if you're making decisions on your materials, does that cross any line on emissions? I can see an argument no, but I think that'll be a question that somebody's going to have to answer in debate. So fundamentally, do you need to open up 19.27a in a bill like this to say that's allowed, or is that not required? Is that getting too deep into a technical thing I've been thinking way too much about and dumping on everyone? I'm asking for help, please, so it's not just my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, it'll definitely come up. Patrick has got his hand up.
1 second here. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a question for Todd, if I may. I'm trying to understand what problem are you trying to address with this bill and how it addresses that?
Cost and speed. So certainty of cost and speed, and that then the intent of the bill is obviously to enable this. We don't want to say pre-certified collectively, right? And you even see the other bill was renamed on the Senate side, was permit ready. So however you want to think about that, it's bringing as much of a solution for a certain typology in a jurisdiction into a code level essentially report, so that with that jurisdiction, then you can achieve that pre-certification. It's not a statewide preemption. It's a code that allows better jurisdiction level acceptance of repetitive designs.
So you're trying to make it so that developers or builders at a large scale can simplify their design process and simplify the permitting process to approve designs that are similar more quickly?
I think there's multiple examples. One extreme could be prefabrication. You want to do repetitive modular designs. That's one example. On the other could be site built, where right now, if you want to do repetitive ADUs, well, you're still going ADU by ADU. There might be some plan review that's starting to emerge, but from the building code, and you're doing project by project, right? This is trying to bridge that gap a little more, to drive upscale, because you would never invest in a performance-based design of an ADU if you couldn't amortize it over a lot of projects, right?
And then why focus this in just on low-rise residential buildings? Is that intentional, or is there a reason why you're not expanding that, or just kind of focusing on that demographic?
A good question. So I've been asked that a lot. One is scale and scope, and we've already gone down two great exercises on multifamily. But most importantly, back to the NIBS, this aligns directly with housing system certification, with the standards they're developing. That is all about housing, and NIBS and HUD were out of Project Breakthrough in 1970s. That's where the HUD code came from. This is expanding on that effort. So not that performance-based code is going to be used in other typologies in the future, but we can only bite off so much, and this aligns with national efforts.
So, and I'm trying to understand the NIBS part. So is NIBS working on something functionally very similar, with the idea be that Washington is an early adopter, and that eventually that we match sort of this national standard, so that national builders and developers can really drive up that scale, not just within Washington state, but across multiple states?
Yeah, correct. So, and you're very aware in the home building side, NAHB and HUD have long been looking at, should there be another preemptive national code, building off the HUD code, or a lot of the efforts at the national level right now are to remove the chassis from the HUD code and so forth, do duplexes. And this is not that. HUD has determined that they're probably not going to come in as an agency and do that. NIBS is the National Institute of Building Sciences, was established it has congressional authority already to develop the standards, do the testing, and so forth to assist, whether it's a national level adoption like a HUD code or the state or local adoption. And they're realizing that now they have a bigger role they can play with states and HGAs. So that's what that standard is intended to do. It could be the ICCPC, but the ICCPC is not focused on housing. It's much, we know more from larger buildings.
Awesome. Thank you so much for allowing the back and forth public
No,
comment.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
That was the intent.
Angela?
Yeah, so with this would be something where they would still have to take the design to the jurisdiction and have it approved individually by each jurisdiction. So it's basically an alternate methods.
Yes, and I had this conversation with full disclosure, with a few WABO representatives, and was talking through how do we communicate this so that it doesn't go sideways on any, because the jurisdiction, I just put my thumb out, whether you agree with this, jurisdiction still has the thumbs up, thumbs down. I think the intent is that you're trying to take something that at a pre-dev meeting with the jurisdiction, you instead of starting at the 40-yard line, you're at the 1-yard line, locking arms and trying to figure out what the best pathway to get that adopted at that local jurisdiction is. There's probably maybe there's some local editation and so forth to get it over the finish line in each jurisdiction, but if the jurisdiction is able to look at that collectively and say, yes, all of these components and assemblies are already in a code report, we know that they've gone through a certain rigorous testing and third-party agency review. Do we accept it or not? Just like we do what we already know as code reports. Now, I'm making big jumps there in your world, Angela, and it's a question more than a statement, but that's the intent.
Because in Kirkland, I mean, I know I've already over the years approved performance-based buildings. I mean, it's under alternate methods. So that's where I was just trying to figure out where the difference is, because I mean, it's kind of the same thing as we always get, well, Seattle lets us do it. And we're like, yeah, Seattle has a different code, things like that. So I'm just trying to, wrap my head where this falls. So thanks.
If I may follow up, it takes that third-party review and that rigor of the questioning, the analysis, and so forth that would normally happen project by project, and pushes it up into a code report so that it's more prepackaged. So that is a big part of the bill to allow that multiple projects, that certainty of that pathway. Whereas, so we don't stifle innovation, right? If I'm going to go propose some sort of new building system about the prescriptive code, as you know, every jurisdiction I'm making that same argument and taking them back to the test results in the lab, and that's not feasible.
Roger?
Yeah, I had 2 points, and Todd kind of brought both of them up. Number one is it is an alternative path. And if you want to design a building from 1 to 24 stories and you don't want to use the performance-based design, we have codes currently that can do it. So it isn't changing anything that we currently have. It is only adding another option for design. And then, both Angela and Todd kind of got into this, but being a structural engineer, we do performance-based seismic designs, and they have become quite common. The process we go through, number one, there is a third party that is hired. So that third party is probably a group of technical experts. The city, the design engineer, and the technical, the third party reviewers get together, and the first thing they do is they agree on a basis of design, which is a performance criteria. So we have to go through the process of all agreeing, okay, this is the performance criteria that we are all comfortable with. Then we go through our analysis as an engineer and show that our design meets the design criteria. What this code does is it, for the most part, replaces that first half where we don't have, there is a codified, okay, here's the performance criteria that you meet. And so it simplifies that design process because you've already got performance criteria identified. I think Todd and I I feel like I'm at the 10-yard line trying to understand all the details of this, but I do have experience in performance-based seismic design. I actually really like it. I have a sign in my office that says it's a antique sign. It says never ever question the engineer's judgment. And when I started structural engineering 35 years ago or something like that, engineering judgment was a big part of our design process. We knew what the code wanted us to do, and in our engineering judgment, we were doing that. That has Our ability to use engineering judgment has waned over the 30 years. Performance-based design gives us that back. So, uh, a personal opinion there that I wanted to share.
Yeah, I've got a question too, but I'll let Hoyt go first.
Go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, I was just wondering how I unmute, so you just did it. Hey, I just want to, same with what Roger says. Performance-based has been done. I reviewed a bunch of them. I've even designed some. The biggest problem that I see with the energy code, in structural, we've been doing performance-based on big buildings. The liquid natural gas facility here in Tacoma that I reviewed is based on a performance-based type of design. But the one thing that I find is, a lot of these IRC buildings are not always designed with the design professional intent. And so they get submitted to jurisdictions that may or may not have the expertise to review this kind of stuff. And the one thing, if we go to this performance type basis of design, which I agree with, I think it should be a requirement for that in the residential type of code that it be stamped by at least a design professional. And sometimes it depends on what the area of expertise that design professional is in to do that performance based. And that's the one thing on the residential building side, which is not required unless you have certain requirements on the energy stuff. And that's the thing, unless I'm wrong, catch me if I'm wrong on this, where on the residential side for this type of system is not going to require a design professional where it's in their area of expertise. Now, the alternate to that is we can always approve it as a building official. If someone gives their, type of examples that they have done this in their area of expertise, and we approve them to do that for that type of structure. But I think when I was reading through this, that was not a requirement that a design professional do that. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Thanks.
Chair, may I ask a question of Hoyt?
Yes.
Hoyt, are you referring to you're referring to the energy code part of it, right? Because
that's correct. That's
okay,
correct.
because
The energy
everything
code.
else is in the building code on purpose that it is assumed these are going to be stamped architecture and engineering, right?
Right, but the problem is when you go through the IRC provisions, right? Like some of this that you're talking about, those are not required to be stamped.
No. The red is what we're talking about down below here. If you see on the screen, it's only an appendix in the IBC 1 through 24 units, so it's not an IRC pathway. But the question where I started getting questions on the energy pathways, even though this isn't directly.
So in the energy code, okay, I'm not talking about the design of the structure like of the I'm talking about the design of the energy system that is going to be done in these. Is this going to be definitely a requirement for a design professional with their expertise? I couldn't find that anywhere, and maybe I just missed it. Maybe someone.
No, you're right. So I think that's the question the legislature is asking is whether that's determined here or through rulemaking if it were to go forward. I tried to map out what I think the existing understanding would be, but I don't know. Because
I feel personally, I'm giving my personal opinion here. I feel more comfortable when you start getting to these larger structures. I mean, you're already going to get structural and all that stuff already designed, but I would also feel more if a mechanical engineer, their expertise is in that, is also designing the energy system with their stamp. Because we have here at the city of Tacoma, for example, we have a licensed mechanical engineer that does our complex type of energy code reviews and things like that. And from my experience of that, I feel much more comfortable in that situation when anyone in the state could actually use this. But a lot of jurisdictions do not have licensed mechanical engineers where this is their area of expertise. And that's what I'm afraid of. So, but thanks.
Yeah, and that kind of is similar to what I was going to ask is, how do you decide who's qualified to, quote unquote, sign off on that from the design professional perspective or whatever, if there's nobody around to do it? Does that just mean you can't use it?
If I may, I guess my question is that a question for the legislature? Because really this is just trying to trigger the legislative mandate to allow a special ad hoc techno advisory group. So is it a question for rulemaking that could be addressed confidently?
Yes. Yes, that's what I would like to have, a rulemaking that addresses that to get it. That's my opinion. So.
Anything else, Todd, or any other questions?
No, I hope I've aired everything out. I just want to be transparent and ask for help. Any comments on the embodied carbon, or do we want to open that up right now?
Yeah.
Because I think the question will come up whether or not this bill, if supported, needs to open up 19.27a. I'm leaning towards it. No, but I don't want, that shouldn't be a single voice.
When you say the embodied carbon,
yeah, you said this bill.
If you I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to give the screen back. And Dustin, I don't know if that's something, if you want to put it on the screen, Chair, I can point out what I'm referring to.
I'm just asking for clarity of what you said. You said this bill, were you still referring to the performance-based goal?
Yes, because in that is the
yes,
is a requirement that it harmonizes across all of the codes, including embodied and operational, emissions. So essentially, whether it's whole building LC or so forth, it's not doing it for regulation, in my opinion. It's doing it because that's an obvious. If you're going to do a performance pathway, you're going to drive down cost every way you can.
And were we thinking to open the embodied carbon bill or 214?
No. I'm sorry. I don't want to confuse people. This is not about the embodied carbon bill. This is in 2381. It acknowledges that you're doing on a performance pathway, you are going to do a combined energy and materials analysis. That's just inherent to what a performance-based approach would be if you're trying to drive down cost. So the question is specifically that I got from the legislature was, does that mean embodied carbon can be an offset or substitute for some of the energy requirements? We've been asked this question before, but we're getting into new territory about how we optimize designs to drive down cost. Right there. So in general, I think this section says tag, integrate the codes. And the more I get into this and ask questions, the more I think this is sufficient to say, yes, that this gives the tag the ability to do that.
I guess the embodied carbon would be the last 4 words or 5 words of that sentence that I have highlighted there.
It says including both operational energy emissions and emissions associated with building materials.
I thought it was yes. We would, but that's how I read it too. So we'd have to account for that.
Roger?
I was waiting for Jay because I saw his hand up before mine, and I was thinking, My first thought, Todd, is that should be a may rather than a shall. Um, as I read it, I'm not sure, but I just to have a to allow a performance-based design for a for a 24 unit structure, and the performance-based design is on the structure. Does it have to be that you do a performance-based design on the mechanical systems, and do you have to do an embodied carbon calculation? I certainly like the options of to be able to, could I do a performance-based structural design and the MEP systems are based on the energy code, the current energy code, it meets all the energy code, or does the whole thing have to be performance-based design? And I just would, my first thought was is that it should be a may, or you can do parts of it. The code, so you develop the code that would allow people to do everything, but not require that it's all or nothing. That, again, just my first reaction to that.
Yep, agreed. And again, I think the question here is, does this give the tag enough direction and authority to go explore that without making this a requirement? This is just can that be part of the pathway is the question, I think. Yeah.
It looks like it. Jay?
Yeah, and looking at the pathways, I think in your question about 1927A, it's going to be making sure that it's clear what's the performance that is being focused on. The embodied carbon bill has some standards for reducing carbon intensity over time. 1927A talks about building efficiency, but not carbon. Some of that is certainly related. But I think that the question would really be if those requirements around building efficiency, embodied carbon reduction, etc., provide the framework, or we need something more from the legislature that we feel like gives us the authority to say that a performance-based path is focusing on these performance-based indicators.
If I may, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, the question is, if we're going to do this, then we need to make sure that we don't trigger some prescriptive requirement in the energy code that piles on, like give us the ability to add some relief, to balance out. If you're going to do something good over here in materials, take a holistic approach, really take a holistic approach on, are you driving down cost and not trigger any prescriptive requirements. Doesn't mean you can't use prescriptive requirements. It just means you have the ability to do a performance-based design. So anyway, I just want to raise the question because that's opening up 1927A is whether it's necessary or not is being discussed to do an offset or a substitution for carbon for energy use.
And I think it's valid. I've got another question too, when they say operational energy emissions, along in the same sentence with emissions associated with building materials, it kind of opens up the door to site versus source again, in my mind, because if you're looking at, the total picture of carbon emissions associated with the entire package, you really got to look at all of it from its origin or none of it from its origin.
And if I may, that's always the challenge with embodied carbon is that embodied carbon is influenced by so many different choices, not just the energy emissions, side of it, logistics and material choices, different material choices, efficiency and structural engineering. So you can't say it's all about energy emissions or that it's excludes it. So it's all the above, right? So I don't think it's a direct source basis, site versus source emissions question, in my opinion. That's why I don't I don't personally believe 19.27A is required to be opened in this bill, but I wanted to say that publicly.
Okay, yeah. I can tell you what I wish it would be done. Hopefully I'm unmuted. I think I am. Is where the comma says, where it says include both operational energy and emission associated with the building material. If it just put a period there, those just related greenhouse gas emissions, and not try to put, to me, including both operation energy, emission, all that, that's a commentary. It's not code item as much. If it just put a period there, I think it would be exactly, because then you could actually do performance compliance with what you decide to do performance compliance, similar to you do in the other parts of the code, in the structural part of the code. You could do in the IRC, for example, you could design one wall and fine with that, do an engineer. In other places, you're actually justifying it. To me, that last statement is all commentary. I wish it would just be just period at the basically Washington State Energy Code, period, and not have greenhouse gas emissions, operational energy emissions, and all those other. But hopefully that makes sense.
So clarifying, Hoyt, you're saying in that blue section there, strike out everything after the Washington State Energy Codes?
That's what I think it should be. I think it should actually be in the codes that actually degrade, and then that way the technical advisory group in the energy codes section could actually deal with this, the actual specific way to do it. I kind of just don't like operational energy emission and emission associated with building materials. It just, I mean, it seems like that's going to put a lot of constraint on the designers and how this gets reviewed, built, and approved. So, or reviewed, approved, and built. So
that would allow the tags to more fully develop it to what they see. What parts of that they see is necessary.
As a counter would allow the tags not to incorporate it?
Well, yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could.
It'll leave them a lot of flexibility.
That's where, Todd, I think is the legislation, is part of the driver for the legislation that does need to be included. And it's the whole question of whether you include the energy code at all and or embodied carbon. I mean, that's a question. And in my mind, again, for a 24-story or a 24 unit building, if you're just meeting the current energy code, whether it's IRC or IBC, and I don't know the differences or when those kick in, but it's what are you gaining by including those in this? However, if the intent is to do it, call a spade, including both operational energy and embodied carbon emissions, don't beat around the bush and say emissions associated with building materials. That gets it open for discussion, interpretation.
I'll make one last comment, Chair. Is that okay? Yeah, I mean, I think we've been through so much as a council on EPCA appliances and site versus source. And so sometimes I think I'm probably a little too sensitive that there's much more of a statutory wall between 1927 and 1927A. And I think there are some times where that's very true when you have very direct fuel source and things like that. But I don't see this is about good design, and we need to have the ability to design a code to create a code that allows us to do good design and drive the cost down. So, okay. Well, thank you everyone for having the conversation. I don't know where that leads us. I don't think anyone's proposing that we take a position as a council necessarily. We just keep informing, but I'll leave it there.
All right, thanks, Todd. Any final comments on this before we move on? Seeing none. The next item was on HB 2141. for processes and staff impacts. I'm not, if that bill isn't moving far, it might be a moot point here, but, Dustin, do you have comments? You're gonna kind of put some thought into what different iterations of that bill might mean for how the SBCC works?
Well, so what we were talking about in bringing this was kind of on our agenda to inform the council agenda item for this Friday. And so looking to the SBCC process and potential staffing impacts, I think it might be okay to table this one till tomorrow since we're considering not drafting that letter, it sounds like. And so my thoughts on this particular agenda item would be to table it to other business for tomorrow's legislative committee meeting to get the benefit of the hearing schedules for the next week. But essentially, I don't have a letter drafted for this, or else I would have had it posted for the meeting here today. But for the SBCC process, the the main thing I think that is the question for folks is if this bill were to pass, how is SBCC limited in its authority to do things? There's, I think, a perception out there that this would limit the legislature from asking the SBCC to do something, and I'm not sure I take that viewpoint, but I can see the perspective for sure. But it would not allow the council to adopt any substantive updates. Now, if we got an ask from the legislature to develop an appendix or do something like we've done in this last code cycle, I think that the legislature would be empowered to do that. Just that we wouldn't be able to adopt a 2027 code, for example, in that process. We would have to make an amendment to the existing 2021 code. But we could get some further input on that as if this passes. The other parts on this that would limit the SBCC authority would be on the local amendments and what we are allowed to do in relation to that. I had some talking points starting to be drafted. Todd, you have your hand up?
Well, I think it's valuable to go through, but I also think we could just simply table it.
Okay. I
and
mean, I have
discuss
to
it
come
tomorrow.
better prepared for a topic tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting for this one. Like I wasn't necessarily I don't have a full letter drafted. It's more just a list of bullet points. And so if we want to table this one till tomorrow, that works for me as well. And Roger?
Yeah, I would, I continue over the time that I've been here on the council. We have spent time thinking about, well, what happens if this legislation passes? What happens if certainly Initiative 2066, it's like, okay, it was in, now it's out. I have always felt like we need to pretty strongly only consider the laws that are passed. What's current, it's not beneficial for us to spend a lot of time talking about what could happen. And in respect to this, but also just thinking about all of the bills, we are monitoring these on a weekly basis. If any of them continue to make progress and may come into play, then I think that they are worthy of our discussion. If it's becoming obvious that any of these are probably not going to pass this time, is there a conversation that we can or should have after the legislative session as a group saying, okay, here's 5 bills or 10 bills that may come back next time. Apparently it will have a different number, but okay, it may come back next time, and have further discussions at that point about what, we could or how it may or may not impact us, that kind of thing. But my preference would be to focus our efforts on those bills that we think really are moving forward and might very well get into the legislation, get passed this year, and then maybe spend some time after the legislative session discussing some of those that may come back next year and be prepared. But
Yeah, at the time, this was an ask from one of the members of this committee, this letter, so it's just kind of carried over and has maybe changed its priority a little bit. Hoyt?
Second, Hoyt. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I've had experience with, and I think it is important that our state building code council take this stuff and make this things. I have done code reviews and some designs in areas down in Utah, wherever jurisdictions has different codes and stuff. And I think it's a real disservice. I'm talking different year codes. Like they had like 91, 94, depends on where the jurisdiction you was. And I was doing design in that time. And like, oh, okay, I got to design to this other code, do things like that. I think the best thing that we have is our state building code council, and dealing with these things, thinking ahead of time is super important, and making sure we get it well drafted out that people are able to follow and do it correctly. So I may have misunderstood you, but I do think this is a process that the state building code council should stay involved with and make sure on these bills that go through that we're not starting to do things different, because there's different expertises around the state in different jurisdictions that I've worked at. I mean, you have jurisdictions like Tacoma is extremely experienced, Kirkland is, Bellevue is, I would say Seattle is, but there's some other jurisdictions throughout the state that are much smaller, much harder to enforce some of these things. And we shouldn't be making it, we should keep it exactly how we're doing it. And maybe I misunderstood, but keep it exactly that our state building code council vets these, people with the expertise looks at it, and then we approve it that way, and not get away from that. So, and I may have just misheard what someone said earlier. So, but thank you.
Okay, thanks, Hoyt. Any other comments on this? There's been a suggestion to table this again till tomorrow. So we can do that. Any other business?
None from me.
All right. Well then, with that, there's only one thing left to do today, or at least here, and that's to adjourn. So I guess we'll see you all tomorrow.
All
Hopefully
right. Thanks
nothing's-
everybody for the time, and I'm glad it went smoother than last Thursday. So.